Hello everyone, welcome back to another lesson. Today's learning goal is I can use the properties of operations to add and subtract integers, fractions, and decimals. We're going to be starting off with integers, okay, and then moving on to fractions and decimals. And we're going to be continuing to work on this learning goal for a little while. So, where do we use negative numbers? Remember that integers include negative numbers. So, the question is, where do we use negative numbers at? Well, oftentimes we use negative numbers when we're talking about sports, specifically sports like golf. Okay.
Far left, he doesn't want his feet to get in the way of the Charles Schwab tee, but 2.
If you have a score of -1, that's a good thing. You're trying to get as negative of a number as possible in golf. Now, another sport that we use it in is football.
300 pass yards and 60 rushing yards per game.
We talk about a football team going backwards, whether they're penalized in yards or if they are tackled behind the line of scrimmage, they have negative yards. We also talk about it in terms of when we're talking about sea level. If you're above sea level, if you're below sea level, there are some cities that are below sea level, and there are some cities that are way above sea level, but if you're below sea level, then you're considered negative so many feet below sea level. This is also being talked about in terms of elevation in the ocean. Okay, a submarine or a vessel that goes underwater. Will have a negative elevation. So we have this for many different uses. Science uses it. We're talking about atoms and the charges on atoms. They have negative charges a lot of the time. Okay, so there are many different uses for negative numbers. Oh, one more that's important. Bank accounts. If you are in debt, you have negative money. You don't have zero money. You have negative money. So there are many different uses like that. So, just a quick reminder what absolute values are. Absolute values are the the distance a number is away from 0. So the distance that -4 is away from 0 is 4 spaces, -11 is 11 spaces, -131 is 131 spaces, 15 is still 15 spaces, 25 is still 25 spaces, 33 is still 33 spaces, etc. So here, we have a couple of equations that deal with negative numbers and addition of negative numbers. So what you should notice is that this -4 plus -5 is -9, just like 4 plus 5 is 9. So 4 plus 5 is 9. For -4 plus -5 is -9. -5 plus -7 is -12. So as you can see, especially in light of our integer chips, okay, when we are adding two negative numbers together, we just add the absolute value of both of these numbers. So 4 plus 5, and then put a negative in front of it. -9 plus -10 is -19, because 9 plus 10 is 19, and you put a negative in front of it. So let's formalize that into words. You can use the absolute value to find the sum of two integers. If the sign, let's just say if, not it. If the signs of the two integers are the same, add the absolute values and keep the sign. The sum of two positive integers, well, we've been doing that since, first grade, is a positive. So 5 plus 9 is going to have a positive answer, as we all know, a positive answer of 14. The sum of two negative numbers is negative. So -5 plus -9 is -14. Okay. Simple enough. Here we have addition of two different kinds of numbers, negative numbers and positive numbers. If you take a look on the left-hand side, you'll notice that all of those end up equaling negative numbers, -4, -5, -3, and -1. On the right-hand side, the ones that are in green, all of those equations end up with a positive answer, 13, 7, 9, and 2. Take a moment and try to figure out what makes the difference. What makes the difference between these two columns? Why are these over here on the left negative answers and these on the right positive answers? What you should have noticed is that here with the negative plus a positive, when the number that is negative has a greater absolute value, so the absolute value of negative 7 is 7, the absolute value of 3 is 3, when the negative number has the greater absolute value, our answer is going to be negative. So because negative 11 has a greater absolute value than 6, we're going to have a negative 5. And then over on this other side, you should notice that the positive ones, the positive numbers inside this expression right here, has the greater absolute value. Therefore, our answer is going to be positive. What you can also notice is that the answer is going to be the absolute value difference between the two numbers. So this is going to be 20 minus 7 over here, 20 minus 7, which is 13. And this makes sense because using our integer chips, remember that the positives and the negatives cancel out. When they cancel out, it's like subtraction. Canceling them out is like subtraction. Over here, we have negative 7 plus 3, so this one right here, since this has a higher absolute value, our answer is going to be negative, but we're still going to take 7 minus 3 to find 4. But we're going to keep the negative numbers over here because our higher absolute value is the negative. So just to prove that, I have made the integer chip model for this, and as you can see, we can form several, 3 exactly, 0 pairs. So this is a 0 pair right here, 0 pair, 0 pair. And because we start off with more negative chips beforehand, we're going to end up with more negative chips beforehand. Oh, let me use a different color to do that. Let's use blue, why not? We're going to end up with more negatives at the end, so therefore our answer is going to be negative 4 because we were left over with 4 negative chips right here. So our answer is going to be negative 4. So to summarize, to add two numbers with different signs, find the difference between their absolute values. The sum has the same sign as the number with the greater absolute value. So here, negative 5 plus 9, we're going to have a positive answer because the 9 has a greater absolute value. So we have to find the difference. 9 minus 5, as we know, is 4, and we are going to have a positive answer, so it's simply 4. As opposed to 5 plus negative 9, where the answer, the negative number has the greater absolute value. So our answer is going to be negative, so let me just write down the negative right here. Let's use a different color than that. Negative right here, and then we again are going to find the difference. 9 minus 5 is still 4, so our answer is negative 4. So those are the rules for addition, and they make sense in terms of putting together a integer chip model. Because when we start off with more negatives and we add some positives, the positives will cancel out with the negatives, but we're still going to have some negatives left over. That's when the negatives are the negative has the greater absolute value. When the positive has the greater absolute value, it's the opposite way. We start off with more positives than negatives. When we cancel out the 0 pairs, we're going to end up with leftover positives. So go ahead and try these 6 problems out on your own. What you should have found is the first one. We're going to add these two together because these are the same signs, so we're adding them together. 5 plus 4, we have negative signs, so we're going to have negative 9. Here we have a greater absolute value with a 6 right here, so our answer is going to be negative, and we're going to find the difference because these are different signs. When they're different signs, remember we have to subtract the numbers. So 6 minus 4 is 2, so our answer is going to be negative 2 because of the greater absolute value of the negative number. Similarly over here, the greater absolute value is with the negative 10, so our answer is going to be negative. 10 minus 3 is 7. Same sign means we add them together. Same sign add. That's going to be 13. We're going to keep the negative sign right here. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0 because they're additive inverses. And 13 plus negative 25 is negative 12. So those are the rules for addition. We're going to start talking about subtraction. So hopefully you feel comfortable with this because the rule for subtraction is going to be very similar to addition, but we're going to add one more step. To subtract integers, we're going to use the rule keep, change, change, very similar to keep, change, flip, but we're going to subtract integers by first keeping the sign on the first number. Keep this first sign the same. So the first number's sign is going to stay the same. Change the subtraction to an addition sign, and then change the sign of the second number. And here is what we mean by that. Here we have 5 minus 3. We probably know that's going to be 2. Okay, but we can also write that as 5 plus negative 3. Because what I have done here is I've kept the sign of the first number. So 5 is still 5. Change the subtraction to addition. And then 3, I've changed that sign to a negative 3. These two things are equivalent. And we'll talk about in class why they are equivalent. Okay. And therefore, 5 plus negative 3, so we have a higher absolute value with a positive answer, so our answer is going to be positive. Since they have different signs, we're going to subtract 5 minus 3, which is 2. The second example is going to be more useful since we probably haven't seen this before. But negative 9 minus negative 6 can also be written as 9 plus, or excuse me, negative 9 plus 6. Negative 9 plus 6 is from keeping the first number the same, negative 9, changing the sign from a subtraction to addition, and then changing the sign of the negative 6 to a positive 6. Keep, change, change. So here we know our answer is going to be negative because the negative 9 has a greater absolute value, and we're going to subtract because they have different signs. 9 minus 6 is 3, so therefore our answer is negative 3. Finally, our last example is 4 minus negative 5. Here, we're going to do keep, change, change again. So keep the 4, change the subtraction to addition, change this negative sign to a positive sign. 4 plus 5, we know what 4 plus 5 is, so 4 minus negative 5 is going to be 9. Go ahead and try these 6 out on your own. So what I have done here in the purple is done the keep, change, change for each one of these subtraction problems. And that'll help us figure out what the answer is. So we know our answer is going to be positive for the first one because 6 has a greater absolute value than negative 4. The answer is going to be 2. Next one, 12 plus 4 is just 16. We all know that. Here, a little tricky. Negative 53 plus 110, that's going to be 57. Negative 5 plus 10 is 5. 4 plus negative 9 is negative 5. Negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7.